Hi there, I'm Mitchell from Brainfart Studio, and this is my remake of the Atari classic Centipede. And in this devlog, I'm going to talk about why I made it, how I planned it, the problems I faced, and what I learned from it. So let's get started. I'm currently competing in a game development tournament called GDKO, or Game Dev Knockout. It's a multi-round elimination tournament with the lowest scoring submissions being knocked out. Each round is roughly a month long, with 2 weeks for creating your entry, a week for playing and rating other submissions, and a week waiting for the results. It's currently round 4, and I'm still in the tournament, and the challenge this round is to recreate the Atari classic Centipede, but in your own style. Once the challenge was announced, I spent a day just brainstorming ideas. I ended up with about a dozen different game ideas, but each of them had technical issues that clashed with the judging criteria or presented a technical issue I didn't think I could solve sufficiently in 2 weeks. So I decided to make a recreation true to the original game. Plus, I already had a major advantage. I already solved one of the hardest problems in my previous round's entry, Firaxis. My third boss was a centipede boss that had similar movement and even split apart after being destroyed. I knew roughly how to go about it and where the main issues would lie. I didn't feel like the programming would be an issue for me this round, but I still wanted to challenge myself. So I decided to spend most of the round focused on polish, adding in those tiny pieces that just make the game look and feel great to play. This is an area I've struggled with in the past, so I thought it would be a great way to learn and try new things. For graphics, I was inspired by Pixel Purge, a Flash game I used to play on Newgrounds. It has enemies made of 3D-ish pixels, and I really love the style, so I borrowed that idea. I also experimented more with post-processing, which I had learned about in my round 2 submission Heart Song. I also wanted to try adding in some new features I'd never done before, like a pause menu, options that save, leaderboards and achievements. Basically anything I can do to make it more of a complete game than I've ever done before. The biggest issues I faced were the online leaderboard, the achievement system, and the centipede's movement. And from the initial discussion on the Discord server, a lot of people had trouble with the movement. Here's how I tackled each of them. My initial thought on achievements was to use an event listener, but as I was implementing it, I just had one of those nights where the code wasn't making sense to me. And since it was nearing the end of the jam, I made the decision to just implement it any way I could. Seriously, it's just a bunch of conditionals. By far, it's one of the things I want to take the time to correct the most. But for a 2-week jam, it'll have to suffice. Do not do it this way. For the online leaderboard, I didn't want to have to remake everything from scratch if I could avoid it. Luckily, there was a YouTube video I remembered seeing from Samyam a few months back that addressed exactly this issue with an itch.io tool called Leaderboard Creator, created by Daniel. I won't butcher your name. Dan. I really love Samyam's videos, so if you aren't familiar with her channel, definitely go and check her out. And I'll post a link to both her channel and the Leaderboard Creator tool in the description below. Finally, the centipede's movement. I know this was a big discussion on the Discord server, so here's how I solved it. First, there's a game object that instantiates a centipede object. The centipede object mainly acts as a container for all the individual centipede segments. It spawns them in, offsetting each consecutive segment by 1, and aligns them to a grid. Then, it finds the segment pieces ahead of it and behind it. If the individual segment.ahead is set to null, we know that it's ahead. There's a method specifically for calculating the target position of the head. Basically, it calculates a target position 1 grid position ahead of where it currently is at. Then, using the overlap box method, I check if that target position is hitting anything in the collision layer, which is set to mushrooms or barriers. If it is, it changes the target position to the row below. There are a few conditionals in there for if the mushroom's poisoned as well. Then I set the target position of the segment behind it to where the head currently is. And it does this recursively for each additional segment. If a segment takes damage, it's set to null in the parent centipede list. By setting it null, the next item in the array will know that that segment is now the new head, and it will split accordingly and continue following the same movement logic. The code is somewhat sloppy. I didn't really take the time to refactor or optimize it once it was working, but for a 2-week game jam, it gets the job done. If you have an alternative method of how you got it working, be sure to let us know in the comments below. I always love seeing other solutions to the same problem. This whole round was focused on leaning into my strengths, but also trying some new things, and I definitely did. The online leaderboard and what not to do with the achievement system were two of the biggest learning points, as I already mentioned. I also took the time to learn more about Unity's particle system, which is not nearly as complicated as I originally thought. Using it in combination with the Pixel Purge art style, it looks like pieces are actually flying off when damaged, and I think it looks pretty cool. Continuing with the post-processing I started learning in round 2, I experimented with a few new effects to help give it a retro vibe, particularly the chromatic aberration and grain. Using the color grading effect to change the color was also pretty cool. It allowed me to have variation to the color palette without creating any more artwork. It saved a ton of time. And finally, I spent time learning about UI and scene changing. It may be kind of a basic thing, but it's an aspect that's been lacking in most of my games so far. And while I'm not satisfied with the UI design, I am proud of what I learned. It definitely feels more complete than anything else I've ever made. Overall, I feel like I did a really good job recreating the Atari Classic Centipede. But we'll see in 2 weeks when we find out who moves on to the next round of the tournament, so wish me luck. If you want to play my game, you can find it over on my X page, and I'll have the link to that in the description below. I hope you found this devlog useful or entertaining, and if you did, I'd appreciate it if you hit that like and subscribe button. I post new videos on game development and my game development journey every week. And if you have any questions or concerns, be sure to let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.